This week, it's not our fault. What? Anything. Just pick an issue, a problem, a bombing, a war crime. Totally not our fault. Especially that hospital thing, whatever that was. What's really going on in Afghanistan, and what are we doing besides bombing hospitals? Next up, one of the empire's most worthy adversaries, Abby Martin, talks about her new show, corporate media, and artistic outlets. And finally, I will probably get shot for saying this, but the NRA is more than worthy of a low-life scum award. But first, it's just another Monday in the machine. Breaking. Doctors Without Borders now bordered on all sides with crimes against humanity. Press release, new tweet, bad deal, TPP, deal reach, corporate greed sealed. People, I repeat, breaking. The killing, blood spilling, crooked cops won't stop, don't need to. The shills at the top say it's just okay to kill without shame, beat till we're lame, come at me again. Breaking. It's just another Monday in the machine. Another Monday, manicked, panicked. A complex, this ego, military, industrial, puffed up pride, jingoist, sly, wicked style, cover-ups for war crimes, chic white smiles, blood red goes with everything. This season, death needs no reason, appeals to no logic. We botched it, we lost it, the cost is priceless. Everywhere you want to be, every place you want to see. World tours, boys and girls, brought to you by war. Watching the home game? Well, there's plenty of action to catch in the stands of seated, depleted hearts and minds trying to find hope and change in a rerun of corporate chains. I do say, quite the crowd out here for a Monday. Well, Bob, where to stay when your home's foreclosed? Your hope is the change in a coffee cup drained, now filled with lookaways. Get a job. And for you, we'll pray. Take a knee, on your knees. Freedom tastes better when you just believe. Smoke and mirrors, the fear factory steam. Keep it oiled, running clean. Toxic sludge makes it hum. When we're down, it goes up, and so we suck. Gasp for air, asthmatic, erratic. A zombified stare, suspicious glare. Who are you? Why are you here? Oh, we bombed you, I see. That's not our problem. You must have started. No, you listen, see? Take some responsibility. You sowed the seeds of destruction, and we simply function as reapers to keep you bad seeds from spreading, infecting, like terrorist cells in a body that only a freedom crusade can and will clean. Those bombs dropped on kids who in terror fled, simply an error. No, terror's what you do. It's why we must save you. Like cops who pull triggers on blacks they call... It's because we care. It's because fair is the hope that did change to a rope, and that if that noose starts to feel a bit loose, step out of line and you'll feel us squeeze. Headlines like pickup lines, just don't mind, it'll all be fine. It's just another Monday in the machine. Breaking. Just another Monday in the machine. Breaking. Shaking, quaking, making this world one breaking at a time. Don't read between the lines, stay in line, keep your cool, play the fool. Yes, freedom always tastes better on your knees. Let us pray. You will be saved if you believe in the breadcrumbs and loaded guns, emptied funds from greedy reruns. This is just another Monday in the machine. Breaking. Don't look past the last red alert. Redacted, covert, need to know basis. We've reached a new stasis, equally opposite, two parties, just one side. One reign of the dollar, the gun, and the spy. It's classified. Files in endless dark aisles, miles of what we've done for money, for fun. Draped with a flag, a lip service smack, and we're done. Print it, seal it, deal it, dish it, sign it, done. Breaking. Just another Monday in the machine. And fuck me, I'm tired of being a cogwheel for greed. Shift now. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. So if you're familiar with my show, or really any show that isn't corporatized, propagandized mass media, you'll know that the U.S. government and its corporate sponsors are full of shit. Overflowing. The gilded cup runneth over. So even as I mentioned in the spoken word just now, when you hear things like US bombs Afghan hospital, you know it's only a matter of time before we find a way to excuse ourselves from any and all responsibility. In this case, it took 3 days. 3 days after the bombing of a Doctors Without Borders hospital in Kunduz, Afghanistan, we declared it not our fault. According to General John Campbell, the head of U.S. forces in Afghanistan, it was actually Afghan forces who called for the attack, not U.S. advisors. So let's just say, for the sake of shits and giggles, that that is true. Do you not fucking check? Even if the Afghani people wanted us to bomb a hospital that treats the wounded without care of whose side or political diatribes, would you not fucking check that goddamn intel? Or intel, that too. You wouldn't, because America. In fact, we have a long history of not checking anything but the military budget, so it's really kind of a miracle that we haven't had more incidents like the hospital in Kunduz. As Anand Gopal writes in his highly frustrating, immensely fascinating book, No Good Men Among the Living, he found through extensive talks with members of both the Taliban and the Northern Alliance that the Taliban was all but defeated by at the end of 2001. But that's no epic war saga. No worthy adversary would fall so quickly, so we stayed. But then we needed a reason to stay, something to fight. And how do you fight a war without an adversary, Gopal asks? Well, quite simply, you make one up. And it was pretty clear from the outset that we were taking the don't ask, don't tell approach in rounding up the enemy. For example, planes dropped leaflets like fucking confetti at a carnival, urging people to turn in anyone at all, who might be a murderer or a terrorist in exchange for wealth and power beyond your dreams. I mean, what the fuck is this, Aladdin? Where's the magic lamp you rub for 3 wishes? I mean, shit, if you were to drop those leaflets in America, it would take all of 10 seconds before you had a line of overzealous asshats offering up a citizen's arrest of someone who just looks funny. As Gopal explains, they would create enemies where there were none, exploiting the perverse incentive mechanism that the Americans had put in place. And in a country where grudges span generations, tribes are splintered and alliances made depending on what occupying force is now visiting, warlords and criminals are all too eager to play the game. As one warlord explained to the author, this whole land is filled with thieves and liars. This is what you Americans have made. I know this game. I know how to survive. I went to the Americans and said, I can find bin Laden. Give me $5 million and I'll bring you his head. So I got $5 million. Then, a few days later, I went to Al-Qaeda and told them, give me $1 million or I'll turn you over to the Americans. So they gave me $1 million and I convinced the Americans to stop the bombing for a little while. And this story is not an unusual one. I could go on. This book is overflowing. Are you sensing a theme here? Overflowing with the painful stupidity and atrocious arrogance we exhibit, and want to keep exhibiting in Afghanistan. Yeah, General John Campbell made it clear that we'd like more time, more money, more guns, and more crime in order to continue this crackerjack job of losing money, killing people, and making terrorists, and then blaming it on someone else. In fact, our scapegoating is so brazen that within 15 minutes of the hearing, Senator Kelly Ayotte felt that she'd heard about enough about dead doctors, so she asked Campbell whether or not Iran is aiding the Taliban. Well, Campbell sort of bumbled over a response, citing some vague reports that maybe, possibly, yes, maybe, which I'm sure was more than enough for Senator Ayotte to use as, oh, wait, yes, it was. I mean, what level of fucking sociopathic, unhinged, deranged, inhumane, ignorant, arrogant, dumb fuckedness do you have to reach to shrug off the killing of 22 innocent people, including people whose sole purpose in life is to try to save lives, in favor of a last-ditch attempt to ensure that we kill more people for no fucking reason other than a hunch based on probably the same fucking bullshit intel that found us proudly bombing the shit out of a hospital in the first place? Needless to say, if you go to a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing, bring a stress ball. As it stands now, Doctors Without Borders is demanding a third-party investigation and loudly proclaiming the incident a war crime because, duh. And the U.S. response? Condolence payments for the victims. Fuck you, DOD. If I didn't already have a low-life scum plan for this week, you'd so get it. Meanwhile, as William Rivers Pitt put it, the Pentagon is going to investigate the Pentagon to see if the Pentagon obliterated a hospital in Afghanistan by bombing it with precision munitions fired from a massive gunship for more than an hour, incinerating civilians, children, and doctors. Sounds legit. And I'm sure the findings of said investigation will mirror our clumsy but ultimately self-pardoning approach to Afghan affairs. A bit like this.
Our continued efforts to stabilize Afghanistan will benefit the entire region and in turn offer greater security for the U.S. homeland.
You know what they say about that first answer. Always go with your first answer, John. Always. To add your name to a growing list calling for the U.S. to rebuild the hospital and submit to a third-party investigation, visit the link below. You can also donate to and learn more about Doctors Without Borders by visiting doctorswithoutborders.org. Now, moving on, if the name Telesaur English doesn't sound familiar to you, here's one that might. Abby Martin. Her show, Breaking the Set, which aired on RT, was a powerhouse of dissent, a stronghold of straightforward, honest reporting. Since leaving RT, Abby has found a new home at Telesaur English, and the real news complete with a new once-a-week, in-depth investigative journalism format, utilizing the same intensity towards the very same empire. Last week, we sat down with Abby to talk about her new show, Empire Files, the corporatized media. You guys. And her artistic endeavors off-screen. Take a look. So talk a little bit about the new show. It's a weekly investigative reporting piece. Why did you specifically want to do that, focusing on one issue a week? Why is that important to you?
You know, Eleanor, I felt like for the last 3 or 4 years, I was kind of reacting to what the narrative was. So there's like this pre-established, preset narrative that's presented to us every day from the corporate media and also the political establishment. And I felt like I was just kind of reacting to that and saying like, here's what's going on, and trying to dissect all these stories and running a million miles a minute. And in the course of that process, I realized, hey, it's actually a lot more crucial, I think, to tell the context of every single issue that you're talking about. So instead of just kind of superficially touching upon these issues and trying to desperately tell the bigger picture, why not just take a week to kind of open that up to people and really say like, here's not only the full context, but here's the history and here's how we got here with this specific issue. And I feel like it's so much more valuable because it's timeless and it can be taught for people to understand much more than they would get from like maybe a truncated 3-minute news report.
What is your goal with these weekly shows? Obviously, investigative journalism, like you said, goes deeper, and you have the ability to really dig into these one issue a week. What is your goal with that?
My goal is re-education. I mean, I know that word is scary to some people. They're like, re-education camps. No, I'm talking about like actually learning history. You know, since we don't really learn history and we're conditioned with this dogma and this mythology about America, and this American exceptionalism is ingrained in our society from such an early age, and moreover, just capitalism and kind of this unquestionable system that we live in that really does not benefit the whole of humanity. When we live in the richest country in the world, we can do better, we have to do better. And I think that media information is the war that we're in right now. And if we have an educated populace, then we'll be able to make our own decisions and unify in a much better way and understand the values that we all share. And we need to stand up against the people who are marginalizing us and marginalize them. So I think that this show's goal, my goal with the show, is to really present these issues for people to understand really complex things, understand the historical roots of these problems, of the geopolitical issues that we're facing today, and kind of see how America's played a really enormous role in shaping the world, shaping geopolitics, and how it's also the construct of empire has constricted growth potential humanity, really. And you know, I hate when people say like, you're just anti-American. It's like, no, I'm a baby of the empire. I'm a child of the empire, and that's why Americans have the unique ability to really stand up to our government, because we have been involved in so many horrors around the world, so many atrocities. I mean, the blood of so much death and destruction is on our hands specifically. So that's why I do think it's really important for Americans to call out the system and call out our government. And with this show, I hope to do that. And I hope to kind of break down this dogmatic paradigm where people think that our government and our country is the best in the world and that we have the moral superiority to invade and bomb other countries based on some myth. And that needs to be undermined and challenged.
Yeah, and of course, I would argue that you are, and people like you, are far more patriotic than just somebody who waves a flag and says we're awesome. You are just like raising a child. If you really try to raise that child to be a good person, then you are actually a better parent than the person who's just like, whatever, keep killing small animals.
That's just the way it is.
I know, it's awesome. So because you started by reporting on the streets, and then of course you went to RT, and you had Breaking the Set, and now you're here, and you've probably seen far more than the average alternative media journalist how the empire fights back against this sort of alternative journalism and freedom of speech in the press. Talk a little bit about what you've seen most recently, and also do you see yourself coming up against that even more as you continue to dig deeper into these empire files that they don't want released?
You know, Eleanor, I know as a friend of mine for a long time, you've seen it already come down on everyone who's a truth teller. I mean, the second that one of my statements got viral, I was immediately marginalized and dismissed as crazy, a lunatic. A couple statements I made in the past 10 years were pulled out and used to totally discredit me. So I have been through the ringer. I have seen the mainstream media vitriol turned against me, which is quite fascinating when you are the center of the machine that you're criticizing every day. So I will not stop. I will not back down. So let's just keep fighting and standing up for the truth because we know it's the truth. And let's keep giving activists a voice that no other corporate media channel will, because that's really who's going to be creating the reality that we're going to be living in. And we no longer have to let the victors write our own future. We're going to write it ourselves real time.
Right, and as you say, activists are the answer, or activism in and of itself is the answer. And journalism is not your only form of activism. Shifting gears a little bit, you also are a visual artist. And I'm curious why your art is sort of like a multimedia platform. Why do you choose, first of all, why did you choose art as an outlet for your activism? And then talk a little bit about your chosen art platforms.
You know, it started as a catharsis for my political activism because I was so intensely political that I needed some sort of like psychological output that wasn't like kind of mindless at first. So it started off just abstract, and of course psychedelic drugs definitely helped the output of that creativity. And you know, growing up in a really artistic family, my mom and grandma had a ceramic studio, so that was really always great to be in a thriving environment that encouraged art and artistic expression. But over time, I just started feeling more confident about it, and I wanted to use art as a way to relay political ideas and also just put out there like cultural ties that we can kind of see that we're all the same. So now, you know, it started off doing abstract kind of psychedelic art, and then it went to a lot of political catharsis and using art as a means for political expression, because of course we know that it can bypass all cultural barriers and language barriers and have these visual elements really hone in on people all over the world that language wouldn't necessarily do. So that's really super important. And also just the interpretation can be so profound beyond even what the artist intends to. So that's really great. And now my art is geared more toward collage, where I'm trying to kind of collage different elements of world cultures and people to show our universal blood, sweat and tears, and how we're all the same, and kind of show humanity through the lens of different things. And I really encourage that everyone has artistic ability, and I think that the system and our society really suppresses that and constricts art. And there's a good reason why, because the more creative someone is, obviously, the less that they're going to be conformed to some sort of like corporate shilldom.
So finally, you obviously have different outlets for your activism, and one started as catharsis, one started as you going out in the streets because you wanted to cover what was going on. And this is something I try to deliver to people and try to ask the guests as well on the show is, What do you say to someone who just looks at what's happening and it is almost like a collage? You know, there's just so much happening. Like, what the fuck? Where do I step in? How the fuck do I step in? I don't know. Like, I'm not an artist. I'm not a journalist. Like, how do you get people that are on the fence or even potentially on the other side of the fence to come over and fight against the corporatocracy and fight for their own futures?
Yeah, and this is the biggest question of all, right? People are like, what do I do? I'm totally helpless. Like, most of the people agree with you and they just don't know where they fit in. And that's part of the suppression of the system, to make us feel like we have no agency, that we have no power, not only with political activism, which is totally not true. Every single thing that's ever been won for the people has gone through great sacrifice and great mass movements of people organizing behind the scenes. You know, Rosa Parks, it didn't start with her. It was years of organizing and doing all these things to get to that moment. And when it comes to art and music, it's really honing in on whatever your passion is. And I've heard you say this too, and I love that you say this, because you clearly have found that passion, Eleanor. And I encourage everyone to just rid themselves of these kind of barriers that they think that they're not good enough, or that they don't have any talent, or that they're not artistic. Pick up a piece of charcoal, pick up a colored pencil, pick up a guitar. Just try to see what it is, because I promise you that it's there within your soul. And it's just a matter of exploration and just giving yourself the time and space to really honing in on whatever that is in your soul that's telling you that you can contribute something beautiful to the world. And once you find what that is, then just do it. And beyond that, I just think that, look, we're at a time right now where the system's completely outdated. Our political establishment does not represent us whatsoever. We all know that. It's kind of a truth that's daunting and very intimidating, but the like minds that are around us are immense. Everyone understands that we're at a peak, that we're at a new era, and really it's a beautiful thing. We should be embracing this. We shouldn't be scared of change. This is something that we can arm ourselves with the knowledge of history and the perils and errors of our ancestors and really change that future for ourselves, because we can do better, we will do better, we must do better if we want a sustainable future.
I think they were coming for either me or Abby there. So for more information on Abby and her show Empire Files, check out telesortv.net/English. So now that we've pummeled the empire and taken a short artistic break, let's get back to it. NRA, you are this week's lowlife scum.
You low-life scum.
I say this week, but honestly, they've been in the running for that award for a very long time. The pro-gun lobby, spearheaded by the NRA, is the biggest reason why we opt for business as usual in the face of facts like these. That, for example, more preschoolers die from gun violence than cops in the line of duty. Or this one, that over 300,000 people have died due to gun violence in the US in the past decade, compared to just over 300 who have died from terrorist activity. War on gun violence, maybe? Or how about the one that compares us to other nations, including Australia, that instituted strict gun laws after a mass shooting nearly 20 years ago? Or indeed the simple fact that an average of 83 Americans are killed by guns every day. That's one on average every 17 minutes, an average of 609 every week. And that last image brings up an important piece of the pro-gun argument, the Second Amendment. Every time the gun control issue pops up, you get, but the Second Amendment guarantees my right to have all the guns I want. Here's the thing, no, it doesn't. The Second Amendment was written for the purpose of state militias, which were supposed to be used for defense instead of the largest standing army in the history of history. And that's not even including the thousands of fucking mercenaries that we deploy on our various freedom crusades. So much for that defense versus offense idea. Anyway, back to guns. The pro-gun nuts will say, well, it's not just for militias anymore, right? It's so that we can protect ourselves from the government. No, stop it, stop. Thanks to that ginormous standing army, we will never again, ever, ever, ever be in a situation where we can overthrow our government using your fucking handguns, so give them up. If the government wanted to come after you, they wouldn't bother taking your guns away first. They do what SWAT teams already do. Shoot you upon entry whilst outfitted in a blend of Kevlar, bullets, and an MRAP. Furthermore, the Second Amendment also includes two words that blow huge holes in the pro-gun argument. Well-regulated. Granted, that shit is slightly vague, thanks James Madison, but its vagueness still means well-regulated. Not kind of regulated, not regulated, but well regulated. Of course, it's up for debate on how we should regulate guns well, but it's pretty obvious that right now guns are about as well regulated as honesty on dating sites. Still, it is very possible that we could get some regulation passed if it weren't for the NRA. Yep, the National Rifle Association is one of the most influential organizations on Capitol Hill and is responsible for almost $8 million in lobbying expenditures in 2013 and 14 alone. This year, they've already poured almost $2 million into the federal government, and that obviously influences whether or not we can get to that well-regulated part of the Second Amendment. Particularly when the ones funding the NRA, who is funding our government, are the gun companies themselves. I mean, hell, who wants their bottom line slashed, right? That's not fair. That's not capitalism. So what if there's some collateral damage? That's what makes America great. So of course, the NRA by design is vehemently against anything that resembles well-regulated. And if you follow the money from gun companies to Congress, you'll find little tidbits like a 2013 public integrity investigation showing that of the 46 senators who voted against background checks, 43 had received money from pro-gun interests. That being said, the public integrity investigation also found that money isn't the only power that the NRA wields. The NRA has a rating system for each member of Congress, something that their staunch supporters pay attention to and act on. One senator claimed to have gotten 5,000 phone calls opposing the expansion of background checks ahead of the Senate vote. And this is the point that I really want to leave you with. The people that would rather have mass shootings every day, literally every day, rather than regulate guns, are the people who are voting. They're the ones who are protesting, and I shudder to put it this way, they're the ones acting out. As Greg Lee Carter, professor of sociology at Bryant College and editor of Guns in American Society, put it, the typical person who is for gun control is very different from the pro-gun person. Calling you or being right there, being an annoyance, hassling you personally. They're much more activist than the other side, and that is what really produces their gains. That's what really produces their gains, being an activist. And they might have a slight advantage with the dick sticks currently in Congress, but the bottom line is, if you do something, if you say something, write something, plan something, people and politicians will take notice. You may be disgusted with gun violence, disgusted by the fact that guns enjoy more freedoms than the average woman or minority, but if you're disgusted quietly, in your own home, over dinner, or just talking with friends, you are doing exactly what the NRA and their supporters want you to do. Nothing. So to join the fight against gun violence, check out everytown.org, bradycampaign.org, and csgv.org. Also check out our Facebook page to find simple, factual responses to 10 ludicrous pro-gun myths. And with this, you should have more than enough ammunition to wage a non-violent campaign on the twisted tyrant, low-life scum, NRA.
You low-life scum.
And just before we wrap up today, this Friday and Saturday in D.C., March Against Monsanto is hosting 2 days of lobbying, marches, and a rally against the DARK Act, which we've mentioned in a previous episode. To learn more about the Food Justice March and how to join in the fight, visit marchagainstmonsanto.com with dashes. You can see it right there. Also, a big, huge shout out to these cities that did not celebrate Columbus Day this past Monday, but instead said, yeah, fuck that sociopathic, homicidal, torturing rapist with a shitty sense of direction. This is Indigenous Peoples Day. For more info on that, also check out our Facebook page, and as always, revolutionaries, please spread and share this episode with all of your friends, foes, and people you don't know, especially some of those NRA people. And check out the last slide to see all the sites that I mentioned in the show. There will also be a link to help support Occupy.com and the delicious dissent delivered daily thanks to donations like yours. It is a 501c3, so anything that you can contribute is tax deductible and hugely appreciated. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. From this loud Devil's Den, good night and act out.